Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about sitting in pain and suffering. First off, yikes! This is a really big and awkward topic. Who wants to talk about pain and suffering? Oh my goodness. It's completely counterintuitive. Why would we want to spend any time at all thinking about how we could sit in pain and suffering? First of all, suffering can't be avoided as much as we'd like to pretend that it can. And the more that we push it away, the more it shows up in our lives as something we need to look at. I think it can be helpful to sometimes think about our family of origin and the messages that we received about being able to sit in uncomfortable feelings, pain, or suffering. Is it something to be avoided? Does it mean that you're weak? Does it mean that there's something wrong with you that you have pain and suffering? And this can alienate us and create more suffering because now we're starting to feel like no one else has suffering. No one else has the kind of thoughts or experiences or feelings that I have. And I don't want to out myself. I don't want to share that with the world because what if everybody looks at me strangely and says, oh my God, I've never thought that, which just creates more pain and suffering. But think about interactions you have with really dear friends and family, people you feel truly comfortable with. When you share your pain and suffering with them, you feel held. You feel like they're there for you and that you're understood, or they say, me too, I've had that feeling. Or maybe it's even easier to think about, what if a friend or a family member shares something really hard with you? Most of the time, our reaction is that suffering shared is suffering lessened, and that we actually feel privileged to be able to sit in there, that we're grateful or privileged that they called us to share the deepest, darkest parts of who they are, and that we don't love them any less for it. And when we share the deep, dark parts of ourselves, they don't love us any less for it either. And if they do love you less, then we need to look at boundaries and whether these are people that really help you grow and thrive. So there's a saying that there is no such thing as bad emotions, but there sure are hard ones. There sure are hard feelings. There sure are hard sensations in our body with that emotions. The tension and the constriction. That moment where that lump in our throat comes and we don't want to cry. We don't want anyone to see that we're upset. The hard emotions or sensations are teachers for sure. But that doesn't mean that we like to be able to sit with them. When we can sit with it, even for just a few moments in that suffering, and acknowledge where we are, it often lessens quicker than if we spend all of our energy avoiding it for days, weeks, years, months, until it forces us to sit in it through mental illness, through physical illness, through burnout and exhaustion and overwhelm. So physically, as an example, tending to the headache doesn't take the headache away, but it doesn't make it worse. But raging against the headache does. I know on the occasions that I have headaches, I often start crying at some point because I'm trying to avoid the suffering of the headache. And yet the crying and raging against the headache inevitably makes the headache worse. Whereas sitting with the headache and breathing through the headache doesn't make it feel any less, but doesn't make it worse. And mentally, when our minds are racing and we can't make a decision and we can't land on anything, and there's just so much mental energy, acknowledging that thought pattern, again, doesn't take it away, but it allows us to know that it is there. And then we can decide whether we'd like to do something about it or not. And emotionally, tending to anger or sadness doesn't change the fact of us feeling angry or sad. But it does lessen it because we've acknowledged that it's there. Personally, a lot of suffering happens for me when I can't determine what it is that I'm anxious about, or can't determine what it is that I'm trying to sort out. It's the ambiguity and in between that creates suffering. And often when I can say, I finally figured it out, I'm angry about that, then there's something tangible there that I can allow to express and work on, versus constantly searching to see what it is that I'm suffering about. In the Western world, we get too far into this idea that this might need to be mastered. And this is not something to be mastered. We are all working on this all of the time. Sometimes we'll be able to sit and acknowledge that pain and suffering, and sometimes we're absolutely going to rage against it. Either way is perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable. We can have compassion for both of those parts of ourselves. But sometimes, just sometimes, we can sit in the pain and find understanding or relaxation or clarity that eases that suffering just a little bit. And when we're suffering less, we can be more present in helping the suffering of others. And the more we all release our suffering, the more we can truly sit in compassion with each other. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I truly appreciate it. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. And if you have any requests for future topics you'd like me to cover, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you have a beautiful day.